Hey everyone, welcome to the June 3rd, 2021 community call. Uh, this is Keenan. We'll be doing more of an update focused agenda today, focusing on a couple of the topics we spoke of the last few community calls. And yeah, let's just get right into it, starting with the Swapper beta. We'll do a little recap and timeline set if you want to pick that off.
Let's do it. So basically, everything's done. We are actually done with everything, and there's no coding, no design, no reviews, but we're still in the last phase of internal testing, and we're waiting for a proposal. Uh, we don't need to wait for it, but I would say um, there's a proposal that needs to be go through. I think last time I talked with Federico, but we could do the release this week. I hate saying dates because I said dates before, but I would say this week most probably 100% almost. But so yeah, that's maybe should I explain a little bit what we call releases and what is a launch? Because at DXDAO it's not like other projects where you release is someone echoing or someone is Augusto, I think your mic is acting up. Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, Zed, I think it would be cool to go over what do we mean by release and like how is
Yeah.
DXDAO? Like what is that process exactly?
Well, I'll try to explain this. Okay. I think it's good that I'm explaining this because I'm not as technical as other people here and it is a bit different. So basically when we launch something, it's not us deploying not deploying the how do you call it, it's not us deploying the code. So I'm gonna try to explain it easily here. So when we release, so let's say here we're releasing Swapper beta. So we package the code. We say, hey, Swapper team is done. Here's the code, and we link to our official GitHub and say, here's the code, and here's the changes. Feel free to deploy this and make a proposal linking this deployment to our swapper.eth domain. So basically, we would do like two or three announcements. The first announcement will be the code is done. Second announcement will be there is a proposal out on deploying the code onto our deploying the code into our domain, and the third announcement will be the code is live or it's deployed. So that's the difference between us and others. At other teams, we would just have one announcement that says the code is deployed, it's live. So yeah, it's three announcements from us. Any questions about that?
I would just add to that, what this enables is that the developers are not necessarily the ones deploying the code for DXDAO. They're doing the work in all cases, right? And they're getting paid for that. But then it's wide open for the DXDAO community to actually do the deployment. And I think that's important because it makes the organization more robust and more resilient.
I think we've seen similar kind of deployment at other projects. Curve acted like it wasn't them that deployed Curve, but it was most probably them. If you guys remember, like they said the code is done, they had the code on GitHub, and someone deployed it, and their token was launched or something like that. And they said someone from the community did it, right? And most probably they did this to cover themselves like from any legal things that might happen or whatever, like just developers not wanting to be the person behind the deployment. We seen this with Tornado. When they launched, they said the code is ready, someone needs to deploy it, and they had like a website where you press it to deploy these different contracts. So I would say we will see more deployments like this from other projects, I would say, and DXDAO might like want to look into to maybe, I don't know, have a system for this in the future.
Yeah, another interesting example is Tornado Cash, and I think a potential like model for this in the future could be that developers basically set up a system where a vote from DXDAO can do the deployment. We actually did something like that. We have done that on a couple of projects, but it would be interesting to have that be sort of the normal template where like the vote actually does the deployment.
Yeah. So if we talk about timeline, correct me if I'm wrong here. So the release is just us saying the code is done. Someone creating a proposal to deploy it on our domain will take 4 days if the proposal is boosted. So we're talking about a launch for next week if rep holders vote for it. And we'll have a date when the proposal is up.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so another cool thing is that if there are actually community members who are observing the development process and see that there was a release, they can actually earn quite some nice reputation if they actually update the content hash for the product with the new release, so that like we actually have incentives in place which are built into the DXDAO governance system to reward people who are actually like updating the product.
Awesome. Yeah.
Any
Thanks, guys.
Questions for Swapper Beta?
I have a couple slightly unrelated questions for Swapper Beta that were left with me. First would be, do you think eco routing could have an adverse effect of driving volume to other AMMs, and is there a strategy to counter this?
You want that said? I could jump in. I have thoughts.
We probably have like too many thoughts about this, and like, yeah. So John, what you're gonna say probably different than what I'm gonna say. You can go.
Yeah, so I would say the short answer is yes, right? Like, because you are giving people access to the best liquidity. If that's on another exchange, then they'll go with that most likely, right? So it's very possible that you're driving liquidity to other exchanges. And I think it's interesting to see what has happened in the past week with HoneySwap. They actually incorporated eco routing into their latest release of HoneySwap. And they also launched farming, so that's adding, probably having a bigger effect. But when they had first launched the new eco routing feature in HoneySwap, and right before that, you could see it more clearly before they launched the farming, the WETH DAI pool on Swapper was getting like proportionally like higher volumes, and it was a bigger pool at that point. It was like twice the size of HoneySwap, and so like the fees that were being earned on Swapper, like after they launched the eco routing, were better, right? So it's interesting because they've basically forked that feature from Swapper, but it was helping Swapper because where we had deeper liquidity, like the HoneySwap users were getting driven there. But I would say, like, more generally, why eco routing is a good approach, and I'm certainly in favor of it, is in the end, like, I think the most important thing here is the user, right? Like having the user like using your product is like by far the most important thing, and it's why Uniswap is dominant, right? Like everybody just goes to Uniswap, and therefore people want their liquidity on Uniswap. It kind of all follows from that, and you can see just how dominant Uniswap is from like a branding and user perspective by just like looking at the gas consumption of the Uniswap router. it's like 20 times the consumption of SushiSwap, and that kind of implies that it's the users that are, because the router always gets used when you're using the UI. Arbitrage bots can go straight to the pairs and kind of bypass the router. So when you see that the router gas consumption is just like that much higher on Uniswap, that is basically just correlating to the fact that there's many more users doing like smaller trades. Like they basically are like the dominant exchange from the user standpoint. And I think in the long term, that's what we're after, and that's what drives value.
100% agree. And to add to that, just not forgetting, like we are late to the game. We're not late to having the idea, because the idea was brought from you, John, like really, really early of forking Uniswap. But we are late to the game somehow, and we kind of launching now when like L2s are super, super relevant and attacking not only one market, but like 3-4 networks at the same time will make a product pretty much dead if we don't have the router, right? We can't try to dominate all the pools at the same time on all the networks. I would say we'll try to, like, instead of pinpoint exact pools we want, and then do farming on them, do incentives on them, and that's enough for us. We don't need to be number 1, number 2, number 3. We could be number 4. I think most people here would be happy being number 4. So I would say L2s will be like the super relevant thing for us, and this is where we want to dominate.
And I would say strategically too for Swapper, right? Like I don't personally think of it as like going head to head with Uniswap. I think what's important for DXDAO is that there's this ecosystem of products, and kind of at the core of all of DeFi is exchange, and where AMMs have become kind of the dominant form of on-chain exchange. I think it just becomes this revenue workhorse for the DXDAO product ecosystem, right? So like if Mesa launches and is driving token sales through its platform, and then tying that into Swapper liquidity, that's like reinforcing revenue generation for DXDAO. And I mean, I think as something similar with Omen, although we don't really have that deep of an integration at this point. And basically anything that DXDAO would do to the future, like many of these ideas and products like integrate or like tie into AMM liquidity. So I think that is like a big part of the strategic value for DXDAO in having Swapper. It's not necessarily like the success is beating Uniswap, right? It's like success could be just driving revenue from other DXDAO products.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. One more Swapper beta related question. I guess this is a bit off topic. Anonymous asks, will Swapper still be launching on Arbitrum when it launches, and is the Swapper token still planned for the launch?
So we will do an announcement for the Arbitrum pre-launch, like before we're launching, saying, hey guys, Swapper will be launched on Arbitrum. And the goal you incentives on Arbitrum with the Swapper token. That's the goal.
And to add more color to the time. And I promise all of these end user. So, I expect they kind of indicated it would take them at least a week to get through the backlog, and then that's another 2 weeks. So, we're looking at like, not the start like 2 weeks from Monday is probably the earliest date that Arbitrum 1 would go live for the end user. I would not be surprised at all if that were to slip a bit, just because they're trying to gauge when this thing is going to be like a full operational ecosystem, which is exciting for the launch. But I mean, I just wouldn't surprise me if it slipped and was sometime in July would maybe be my guess.
It would make sense. Also, they already announced Etherscan on Arbitrum that will be launched on July 2. So they're probably not wanting to have the users not have Etherscan for that long. So if it gets released before that, it would probably be just like in the end of June. But that's just speculation. But we are ready. We prepared Swapper and August have been working on DXVote, so it can work with Arbitrum, so we can launch it via the DAO.
Yeah, DXDAO needs its governance base on the chain, right, to be operational. For those who might be new to that concept, so that's the idea with the DXVote. It's a new iteration on the governance platform based on the DAO Stack platform we have today, and the idea is to use it on Arbitrum. Potentially, I think the first time we'll be using DXVote. Maybe we'll get something up and running on XDAI in parallel or earlier, but it could be the first use of DXVote.
Perfect. Thanks, guys. Moving on to a similar topic, the Swapper farming campaign. Looking for a brief update, time conscious on that. Maybe, Chris, you have some information.
Sure, yeah, just a brief update because it kind of falls in with what Seth was saying about the beta release. So there's been discussion about launching a farming campaign to coincide with the launch, and the consensus on the last governance discussion was to go forward with the XDAI campaign that you can see at the top here. And really the goal is kind of twofold here. One is to help grow DXD liquidity, which is actually very low right now. We'll get to the buyback later. And then second, really feature farming as a tool and on Swapper, and try to encourage other products to use that. So the only holdup for the XDAI campaign is actually the DXD from the buyback. So there's a proposal up to withdraw some acquired DXD from the buyback and return that to the XDXDAO treasury. And then once that's in there, we can begin the proposal process for this. I know that there was some concern about incentivizing liquidity at these levels, and I think those are good points. And I do think this is in conjunction with the buyback program, and we already have lots of the proposals out there and beginning on that. But I do think that this is a pretty targeted and small campaign, really focused on just building some base liquidity and featuring the platform. So I think, and also given that it's relative short time frame, apologies for the New York sound. But yeah, given the targets, the small target liquidity and the farming campaign, the amount of time, I think this is a good way of featuring that, and also helping to build some liquidity for DXD, which, as we may get to later, discussion on maybe doing the buyback through Swapper itself. But in order to do that, there will need to be more DXD liquidity. Still need to work on the mainnet farming campaign because we need to do the buyback there. But I think the consensus is to go forward with the XDAI campaign when that release, when Swapper beta release goes live.
Awesome. Thanks, Chris. I did have one question, maybe a bit wider of a focus. HoneySwap just launched farming and has seen considerable gain in pool size. Does Swapper have a plan to counter this?
We're talking about XDAI now, or we're talking about in general. I would say we're not countering HoneySwap. We have our own roadmap. We have our own features and what we want to do. So we will have farming on not one chain, on different chains. We will do it on Arbitrum, on mainnet and on XDAI. The focus short term will be making some farming incentives for mainnet for DXD pair, and when we release Arbitrum, we'll go more like widely on different other tokens that are not like that not relevant to DXDAO, and the reward token will be like swapper token instead of giving out DXC. So the counter would be the swapper token release and us doing a wider campaign on Arbitrum.
Awesome. And Geronimo asks, can we afford to not focus on XDAI?
I mean, let's ask the same question to the other. Like, you can only focus on one. Like, if we use the word focus, can you focus on both XDAI and an Arbitrum? I would say the word focus is lost if you do both. We will still do XDAI, but I don't think we want to lose the opportunity on Arbitrum.
Perfect. Yeah, cool. Anything else on the swapper farming campaign? All right, moving right along. I think Sky's here. Just looking for a quick update on the Omen market competition and what's the deal with the 100 entry limit?
Yeah, thanks, Keenan. So the Omen market sourcing competition, that was a way for the community to enter different interesting markets to Omen, was quite successful. There is a prize pool of 10,000 XDAI and 5,000 rep to be distributed to the top 10 winners, and there were about 160 entries. And there is a slight hiccup with the UI of Alchemy competition scheme, where we've now closed the entry period, which was a 10-day period, and we've gone into the voting period. But the current Alchemy system is only showing 100 of the market submissions instead of all 160. And we're working with the DAO Stack team is aware of this issue, and they've been looking into how to correct it, and hopefully can get all 160 markets showing there. We do have a backup. We're able to run a query, so we have like a spreadsheet that has all the markets, and it may come down to sharing that manually and allowing everyone to like see all the different markets. But the actual competition scheme on Alchemy is a little bit of a problem right now. Hopefully we can get it sorted and then get it sorted in the next day or two. And so that would allow rep holders to come in and vote on XDAI, on DXDAO's base, to pick the 10 most relevant markets that would win the competition. And so all rep holders have the ability to vote to choose 10 of the markets, and the total rep of the top 10 will end up being the prize winners, and those markets will get funded and created on Omen as well. And so DXDAO is allocating funds already so that there can be capital available to create and fund those markets. But keep watching maybe the Omen Keybase channel for hopefully when this gets sorted out. And if it doesn't get sorted out, we'll have to figure out a way to like make this vote as fair as possible, and get the appropriate winnings to like the market creator, the market entry wallets. But yeah, that's kind of a summary of where it's at right now. Hopefully we can get the scheme sorted out and then move forward. But we have a 5-day voting period, so it's sorted out, and then rep holders have the next 5 days, 5.5 days as of now, to vote on these markets. And so it's important for everyone possible to come in and participate in that as a rep holder.
Awesome. Thanks, Sky. I got one question here from Kobe, asking what happens if no one votes. I don't think that's necessarily a possibility. I guess they're just curious into the logistics of how that would work.
If no one votes, then rep holders. So this is rep holders on the DXDAO base on XDAI, which is was a mapping and now has a slight divergence from like rep holders on mainnet, but it's the duty and responsibility of rep holders to actually vote on this competition. And if no one votes, that would be a problem for DXDAO as a community in general. So I don't expect that to happen, and I'm pretty sure that it won't happen. So we would like to get as many rep holders voting as possible, but I'm sure there will be some rep holders that will definitely be voting.
Thanks, Guy. Anything else on the Omen market competition? Cool. I see there's a lot of discussion on the buyback. So why don't we move ahead in the schedule a bit here?
Just
And
warming it up.
let's do a quick update on the DXD buyback. Chris.
Yeah, no, I'm like just gonna press return on this half thought discussion. Yeah, so buyback orders. Actually, can I share my screen? Or yeah. Okay. So this is a spreadsheet. I linked to this in the market chatter thread in Discord. So this is just kind of an update of the buyback program so far. So there have been 5 proposals executed. There are 2 currently in the queue set to pass in the in the coming days. And you can see here the status so far. There's been 279 DXD acquired, which is about $85,000. And you can see here how the orders have been filled. So just a reminder how the buyback orders are placed. So these are orders placed on the Gnosis protocol on XDAI, and they are taken a price 2.5% above the price on Swapper, the DXD WETH pool on Swapper. And so the orders are placed there, but it's up to investors or traders to come in and actually either fill those orders, arbit away, or maybe if someone is looking to exit and needing some liquidity, they can do it themselves. So you can see we had 2 orders that were filled completely. And then the current order is at 39.5%. There's actually a pretty large, or I don't know how.
Hey, Chris, not to interrupt, but I don't know if it's just me, but I'm seeing blinking of your shared screen.
Oh.
I don't know if that's just me, but maybe Keenan or somebody could.
I'm not seeing it myself. Just quickly for anyone that might be unfamiliar with Discord, you'll have to manually opt into Chris's stream. It'll be on the left in the voice channel, but I'm not seeing any flickering on my end.
Okay, that's good. Carry on.
Flickering, it's like winking at you. Yeah, and just I was going to say, so that actually there's currently I guess like a 9 WETH buy order at 0.1181 DXD WETH, and the current price on Swapper on XDAI is 0.111, and I think Uniswap is like 0.112. So the current buy order is above the market price pretty everywhere. I'll stop sharing my screen if that's. I do have I'll just link it to it right here. Grab the link. But yeah, so, and there's some discussion just to kind of frame the discussion here. So obviously this relates to a lot of different things with Swapper and launching a farming campaign and some concern about incentivizing liquidity at these levels while we're trying to do the buyback. You know, it is a little bit of a kind of monetary experiment in the sense that we are acquiring DXD from the open market and then actually issuing it and distributing it out in a farming campaign. But I think that is all part of a way of kind of like trying to jumpstart the DXD liquidity. Some of the questions in yesterday's governance discussion were around one, the the slippage tolerance. So right now it's 2.5%. So that means that the limit order is placed at 2.5% above the market, above the DXD weth pool, and whether we should increase that to a more attractive slippage. And then second is whether or not the buyback should be continue to be executed on Gnosis protocol, or whether we can try to do that directly on Swapper and be a bit more active in this. So yeah, just curious to hear people's thoughts. And then I guess just on the mainnet. So there's not been a mainnet proposal yet. I just submitting another XDAI one today, so I could probably do could do a mainnet one after. I think there's been some concern about accessing that liquidity itself, because it is pretty gas intensive to get to the Gnosis protocol there. So I think the thought was hoping to increase the trading volume of DXD so that the buyback order that's on mainnet could be larger, and then justify some of the higher gas costs it would be to access that order. Interestingly, the volume of DXD has actually gone down over the last 2 weeks. So we have not yet been able to increase that volume. So the concern is that we wouldn't have a large enough order on mainnet to justify the cost of going into Gnosis protocol. But I think we should move forward in the with the mainnet proposal regardless.
Looks like Hedgehog would like to speak. Go ahead.
Cool. Hi guys. So there's some discussion about increasing liquidity, and then this will increase the arbitrage opportunity between the mainnet and XDAI. See, I think this is we're not thinking about this properly, because the thing is, as soon as like the buyback starts on mainnet as well, like the arbitrage opportunity is it really shouldn't exist anymore, because the reason is that you are placing limit orders on mainnet, and you're also placing limit orders on XDAI. Like after a few buybacks, like the limit orders that you'll be placing on both mainnet and XDAI will be at essentially the same levels. So increasing DXD ETH liquidity is essentially irrelevant. Like how you should think about this is that we are increasing the buy wars, let's say slowly 2.5% above the market price each time, right? Essentially, you are just like walking the price up slowly over time, like 2.5% each time. Really, like unless some entity comes in and really realizes that we are doing a buyback and starts aggressively market buying DXD, like what the buyback will look like is just that with every buyback, the price just goes up 2.5%, and it will do so on mainnet and XDAI at the same time. I think this whole thinking about like increasing liquidity and that will contribute to arbitrage opportunities. Actually, in reality, like there will be no arbitrage opportunities once the buybacks occur on both mainnet and XDAI.
I think one
If
thing
the
we
limit orders have premiums, then there is an arbitrage opportunity built in, right? Because we're actually setting.
Yes, so there is an arbitrage opportunity now, but that only exists because we're not even doing a buyback on mainnet. That's why the arbitrage opportunity exists. Once you start the buyback on mainnet, it's the same thing, 2.5% above the market price on mainnet. So if you're doing 2.5% above the market price on mainnet and 2.5% above the market price on XDAI, where is the arbitrage? There is none.
Right. So I think maybe we're talking about different things with the arbitrage, but like I'll just not use the word arbitrage, but like when some of these limit orders have been placed, some of them have not fully executed. And I think the reason for that is even though the limit orders were above the market price, and this was all on XDAI, the slippage on XDAI was significant enough that there wasn't much of an incentive for people to fill the whole, like you'd only see like partial filling of those limit orders.
Right.
Well,
Look,
yeah,
I get that.
Yeah.
like 2.5% is really no slippage at all. Like if I were to buy 10 ETH worth of DXD right now through 1inch, the slippage there is 5%, I think already. I think this is really short-term thinking that we have to rely on arbitrage to kind of get our DXD. Really, as soon as like the mainnet buyback starts, like we will, like we won't have to worry about arbitrage.
When you say arbitrage, are you referring to like the cross-chain arbitrage or between the limit orders and the market price?
The cross-chain arbitrage.
Yeah.
Because really the aim of this buyback is to just slowly walk up the price, right? The most extreme example is we immediately start buying at 0.3 ETH, and then people just start selling to us. But the way that we are doing it now is that by slowly walking up the price, we are making sure that people sell at the price that they're willing to sell. That's the whole that is in my mind what the whole aim of this buyback is, and I don't think arbitrage will ultimately play a major part in this buyback. And so I want to go back to an example, of something that happened today, like in market chatter. Someone said, Mango said another top holder sold 500 just now, and I had a look. And they actually sold 1,000. So they sold 1,000 DXD. Now, I'm going to put my hand up and say they sold into me. And that was my limit order on mainnet at like 0.105 ETH. So my point is like, as soon as you place that liquidity in a limit order on mainnet, people will just be selling on mainnet. And the arbitrage will come when people realize, the limit order on mainnet is gone. Now I'm going to, start filling on XDAI, right? That's kind of what will happen. I really don't think that people will be going, I'm going to buy some DXD on mainnet and then sell it on XDAI. Like that kind of opportunity is just like such a low probability event.
Yeah, on kind of the mainnet XDAI. So the limit order would only be able to be placed on Gnosis protocol on mainnet, and actually accessing Gnosis protocol is, you could argue it is a little bit of a sidechain because you actually do have to deposit into the protocol itself, and of course Gnosis protocol is not connected to any of the aggregators. So I think the problem is that there is like some kind of disconnect between the Uniswap balancer, even like Swapper mainnet liquidity that is kind of very well integrated, and Gnosis protocol where the orders would be placed. And so I think that's one of the concerns.
Sure.
Broadly speaking,
Broadly
speaking, I think you're kind of describing like the perfect elegant solution for how this goes forward, and I think like it does, and maybe we should take a little bit of like confidence in the process, right? Trust the process in a little bit. I think there is a desire, maybe I don't know if it's right or wrong, to speed this up a little bit and kind of move this along as it's gone too slowly. And I think that's where some of the recent kind of conversation has. I do think we really want to build things like you putting a 0.105 buy order on mainnet, because like DXDAO is going to be committed to buying 2.5% in the future. So in a lot of ways, I think we want to be able to like encourage other members of the community, other members of like not even within the DXDAO community, to like buy into this. And so when they see a big sell order, be like, boom, I'm going to go like put limit orders of my own. So I think that's kind of part of it in general, is inspiring confidence. But I think you're right with the mainnet discussion, but I think that it's a little bit trickier because we are using protocol. So there is I think the problem is we can't get people to see these orders themselves, and we're almost like relying on intermediaries to place the orders or to to go into Uniswap and Balancer and be able to buy DXD and then go back to Gnosis protocol. And
Sure.
yeah,
Okay. So yeah, I mean, I'll touch on both those points. Yeah. So the first point was that it is on Gnosis protocol. So yeah, I do get that. Yeah, like you said, it's not on aggregators. You're right. This is probably where, someone like myself, I do encourage the rest of the community to also, help participate because, yeah, like for me, it is really just like, let's say Gnosis protocol is at 0.12. It is literally, I guess, me putting a limit order at 0.115 on 1 inch, right? Which then I think that puts my limit order on 0x getting filled and then selling it to the DAO. So the arbitrage would kind of work that way, like with limit orders and arbing other limit orders. I still disagree with the fact that people will be using market orders to arbitrage. On your second point about the speed of this buyback, now, personally, if we disregard the swapper kind of liquidity event, then, I have no issues with the speed of the buyback right now, because I think in reality, like if we are talking about maximizing the profits to the DAO, the slower the better. But since we do have this event that is coming up, I think the priority is that getting DXD ETH closer to fair value is more important than the speed of the buyback. So then in that case, we may want to think about speeding it up. But excluding Swapper, I'm perfectly fine with how the speed of the buyback is right now.
I'm curious, would you say like another success metric though is the amount of DXD acquired by DXDAO?
So I mean, I had this discussion, I think, somewhere earlier in the week as well. I think it is. The discussion at the time was that there were 2 points. Oh, sorry, actually, it was someone wrote something on DAO Talk, right? About having metrics about the buyback. So they wrote examples of goals. We expected buyback at least K DXD from the market, or we expect to raise the price of DXD to greater than 0.15. Actually, I think those are conflicting goals. So really, really, I think our success should just be measured in what percentage of our limit orders are being hit. That's probably what my measure of success would look like.
So, and just to clarify, like you'd want more or all of the limit orders to get filled, right?
Yeah. I would want more or all of the limit orders to get filled, and as soon as none of the limit orders are getting filled, that means our buyback is too slow, and we need to increase the pace of it. So, again, let me look at this table that.
So Chris had shared like so some of the limit orders weren't getting filled. So I think there's like one of the approaches could be just to increase the tolerance, the slippage acceptance on those orders, and basically set them higher. That would help them get filled.
Those limit orders right now that are not getting filled, to me, that is a failure. And possibly we are moving too slowly. But again, like the buyback is still slightly early. If we see more and more of these limit orders just not getting filled, then I think that is an indication to us that we should be a little bit more aggressive in how we are moving the prices up.
Oh, and I should clarify, I think I misspoke in a conversation we had on Discord like last week, but like I was thinking that these limit orders just stayed open. They actually are expiring, but the expiration date I think can be set in the proposal, so we can tweak that as well.
Sure. I think actually increasing the duration of limit orders would be good. It would be nice to see an order book, that doesn't just have one bid in it, which we are seeing on XDAI right now. If we have 2 or 3 bids sitting there, that would look better as well.
Yeah, I mean, I see the appeal of building this like buy side order book. What do you think about using market orders from DXDAO to execute the buyback?
I'm pretty against that, I think, because I definitely don't like slippage, in DEXs. Limit orders are definitely the most efficient way to do this. 2.5%, right now does look. So I guess here's the thing. Like, if we were to market buy 10 ETH worth of DXD, and let me check that on 1inch right now.
Yeah, and while you're doing that, I can explain a little bit too. Like, there's some nuance
Sure.
to this because we are sort of on like a time clock with Gnosis Protocol. Like, Gnosis wants to sunset Gnosis Protocol v1, and they, I think, are the main ones running the solvers. So it's sort of like within their power to turn it off, essentially. And so at some point we need to have plans basically to get away from Gnosis Protocol v1, and we were actually discussing this week like implementing with the engineering we were discussing implementing like a relayer which would buy directly off of Swapper or any Uniswap fork. But with that you end up, I think market orders are really the only thing you can do on Swapper. You can't like set up a limit order, but I mean we could also explore like 0x or something as an alternative. I think 1inch is difficult due to the amount of calculation that gets done by their front end, like on the fly. So it's a little bit difficult for us to do that.
Okay, so with a 10 ETH market buy right now, on 1inch you are copying 5.96% slippage. Now, this is already worse than if we just put a limit order 5% above the last market price, right? And if we were to actually just put limit orders, something like Bamboo Relay, that's kind of where you can, I guess, have limit orders, and that is connected. That is integrated, I think, with 1inch as well. So I don't know, maybe that's an option.
That contracts can create limit orders on 0x. I think that stuff is off chain, right? Like, I think the best option is still to sync up with Gnosis about Gnosis Protocol v2. It's right now it's not possible that the DXDAO is putting a limit order on GPv2. They signal that they are working on it, and then it's just like the question is, when are they going to allow on-chain limit order creation by other contracts? I know they will release it, but the question is when.
Sure. Yeah, I probably agree with you that we just stick with Gnosis. Really, when we are actually talking about ARBs, like it's probably like $100 or $150 between someone putting a slightly, as a community, like we can either choose to help the DAO as much as possible or not help the DAO, right? But as a community, it really is in our best interest to help the DAO as much as possible, so that let's say there is a limit order for 0.12 on Gnosis, then I will be probably putting it at like 0.118. So when I get filled and then I sell it after gas fees, I make minimal, right? And that's probably how we should think about it.
Awesome. Great discussion, guys. Anything else on that before we move on?
Yeah, great insight. Thanks for jumping on and sharing that.
Yeah, good stuff.
Awesome. Just kind of at the top of the hour here, I wanted to do a quick update on the Omen yield and token. Tammy, I think, is on. Maybe we could get a quick recap of the changes since the last time we talked about it. and the DXD snapshot for Omen Token.
Hey guys, so just a couple days ago, the Omen Guild governance and token distribution post was updated with some just other detailed information, no major changes. Just that we have a contingency of if there is some sort of use of Mesa for any type of exchange of DXD for the Omen initial genesis, that we would potentially not use Mesa if the MVP were not viable at the time of the initial launch of Omen Token. So that's one factor. They currently have a 4%. We have a 4% allocation for Mesa. That would then just be moved to the community allocation and likely the airdrop specifically. Aside from that, the DXD snapshot is going to occur, and that's there's going to be a snapshot based off of for the Omen token distribution, based off of whoever holds DXD, whatever address that is that holds DXD 15 days before the token launch. So there is not a date yet for the token launch, but when there is an announced date and we actually launch the token, that would be the date that the snapshot would occur, and those address holders would then receive the distribution. And a separate note, there's also some good discussion happening from Christopher from 1KX about the allocation to DXDAO. I'm actually going to write a comment in response to hopefully get some more feedback from DXD holders regarding the current distribution for Omen token to be held in the DAO. And yeah, so it's an ongoing process, but that's where we're kind of at right now. And if anyone has any questions for any of the team or Geronimo, be a good time to ask.
I think Chris is actually here, Christopher from 1KX, if you were interested in maybe shedding some light on that. I see you've unmuted. We're not hearing you on our end.
Well, Discord sometimes is funny. I often have issues with it. But one thing Christopher did note is that he thinks that the discussion of the distribution should merit further discussion. I'm actually in agreement with that. So with that said, I would propose that we don't post the on-chain proposal for the end of the week, but maybe prolong it to sometime next week, depending on if there's any other feedback in the forum from DXD holders.
And can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, great. Yeah, so I mean, first of all, apologies that I'm coming here last minute with this kind of like proposal. I should have been far more engaged in the whole process like earlier on. So yeah, that's definitely on me. Like my point is that 70% kind of like as a pre-mine going to like just a DXD or like DXDAO will be like a huge deterrent for like any future participant or like future purchaser like of the Omen token. And I know, you know, like that the speculation aspect is not really kind of like what we want to get into, but I also see it as kind of like a very bad signaling, you know, to other founders or like other people who want to basically contribute to DXDAO and basically want to spin off new products out of DXDAO. And I can see them kind of like having issues, you know, if 70%, you know, is kind of like being perceived as a blueprint share that DXDAO just keeps for itself. And yeah, just like taking some examples from like the traditional world. I know it's obviously like not apples to apples, but there are company builders which take in the range of like, you know, 10 to 25% of equity of like of a company that they're basically like incubating more or less, you know, where they basically put research an idea and they put the people on it. And so I think it's like relatively equivalent to like what we have been doing with Omen and with Swapper as well. And then obviously you also have, I mean, everyone is probably like familiar with like, you know, consensus. and that they are like taking like 50% of like the projects that they are working with. And this has like actually resulted in like huge problems for these projects in attracting like any sort of follow-on funding. And we are basically like, taking 70% here. And I think I don't see like this amount of like token holder centralization. I don't see it necessary. Yeah, I can share my comment in the forum. My recommendation would be to go for something like 10 to 20%, because that.
Hey,
Can I
Chris,
ask, like, oh shit.
Yeah, go
Can I
ahead.
say something? Okay, I'll go ahead. So, is owning Omen, Omen token, is it owning product Omen? I'm just trying to see, like, when it comes to other projects, there's no DXD token, right? I'm just trying to see the balance here. So if DXDAO gets Omen token, does it give it more ownership?
Like, what do you mean by more ownership? What does DXDAO get more ownership? I don't get the question. Really.
So if we don't release any token, who owns
Yeah.
who owns Omen?
Well, yeah, I mean, in that case, it would probably be completely owned by DXDAO, right? But
What
in
does it
terms
mean?
of,
Does it mean DXD holders or rep holders?
well, the future with governance 2.0, a mix of both, I would say.
Yeah. But now, like, when we don't have it, is it like rep holders have control of it, but they don't own? I mean, yeah, the control is owning, but the DXD token holders are still somehow that's the token you hold if you want to have ownership right now, at least, right? You can't.
Yes.
So just to clarify,
when we release Omen.
sorry, just to clarify, so DXDAO itself like is the owner of Omen, right? But there is a implicit agreement that like revenue from the products that DXDAO builds, like Omen, goes to DXD holders. So currently, DXD holders are the beneficiary of the revenue that comes from the Omen product, right? And that is a social, that's currently like not built into code, right? That's a social promise of DXDAO, and that's the whole point of DXD token. So right now, DXD holders get the revenue from Omen, like 100% of the revenue from Omen, right? And so if you introduce Omen token, which is this new dynamic, how do you fairly still give like the majority or most of the benefit of Omen revenue to the current stakeholders who already get that revenue, which is DXD holders? So if you only give DXD holders 10% or 20%, they're getting, I mean, 20% of something that's huge is still better than 100% of something that's small. But the question is, what is that balance? And that's the hard thing to answer, I think.
Yeah, I completely agree. And obviously, it's a lot to give up if you currently like own 100%. But it also kind of like depends on really like how we as DXDAOs kind of like see ourselves. I personally don't think a collective is necessarily like the greatest product builder. And usually like the greatest products are being built like really by outstanding kind of like individuals. And from that perspective, I would prefer to give more independence to these protocols. And with that comes obviously also, they actually like owning a larger share of these protocols versus, themselves owning DXDAO. And I mean, I think like I said it, and also like in one of my the replies there, like for me, success of DXDAO doesn't mean like a high token price of DXD, or doesn't mean like, a shitload of fees being generated for DXDAO. For me, success of DXDAO means that we are able to attract like the best talent to actually work on DXDAO and to kind of like launch their products with DXDAO. And if we kind of like set a precedent here, that we are basically saying, okay, yeah, come to us and build whatever you want to build with us, and we support you. But then in the end, we're going to take like 70%. I don't think we will be able to like attract the best talent with that approach.
Yeah, and I agree that like that model is not attractive for bringing in new products and teams, and DXDAO being a sort of incubator. I don't know if it's fair to look at Omen and Swapper that way, because they're kind of organically built by DXDAO itself. So I almost think they're two different things, right? Like, if it doesn't make sense to like change up Omen and Swapper, I still think a different model could be applied to attract new teams.
I mean, the thing is, right now, it's obviously easy to say, okay, like right now we are owning like 100%, and we are generous in giving like 30% away. But the thing is, like, we will not. It will basically, like, there's a very high likelihood, at least also like from what I've seen so far in the space, that just the amount of like centralization, that the Omen token would then have, would not really be interesting and like attractive enough to just let Omen grow. And this is like also what kind of like happened to a lot of like other protocols. Where, I mean, the thing is kind of like you need outside contributors, right? And you need not just investors, but also kind of like people who are like really, really passionate about the protocol.
Yeah.
But that becomes like much, much harder, when there's always, like this doomsday sword swinging above you, which is kind of like the DXDAO holding 70% of the token and basically getting like 100% of all the fee income.
So I actually view this initial distribution more like the initial round of funding, right? Which you said is typically maybe 10, 20%, right? Like, this is the initial round of external distribution. It's not really funding, right? But it doesn't preclude DXDAO from further distribution in the future out of that 70%. Right. So like,
yes. I mean, that's true, but at the same time, right, we are basically robbing the founders of their independence, right? So, like, ideally, right, we went like the current like leaders of Omen and Swapper, right? We can gradually grant them like more independence. Like, with that comes also that they will be able to like negotiate what is going to happen like with the tokens, with the Omen tokens, and like how they are going to sell them. They cannot go back to like DXDAO and basically like say, hey, DXDAO holders, we want to like raise a round. Can we please get some tokens so that we can like sell them to investors? It's not really kind of like encouraging, like a lot of like founder independence.
Yeah, it's interesting that we always saw the guild structures as like not sovereign entities, but rather like well-defined inner working groups of the DXDAO. Like, even the ENS domain will never transfer the ownership to the guilds, but rather DXDAO will always own Omen.eth, which as a result will always like make the guilds not 100% sovereign in their product.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a process for a lot of things. I can also for them to like they
Awesome, guys.
become, and also more or less like being able to choose, with in the future by I don't know, what contributors basically like invite to also work on the project.
Would you be fine with brainstorming here, like
Even my
to the guild?
shares, they are vesting over like a certain time horizon. And so I would have like recommended long-term vesting for the core members of every guild anyway.
And
I guess I'm
like, I definitely, sorry, just like last thing, I definitely see your point about like DXDAO being like the incubator role. I think we just, or like me, myself, it's actually like pretty difficult to incubate teams, maybe because we are not like really good in signaling that we are able to incubate. I would love to see teams actually approaching us, and we're actually having one big example of actually an external team being incubated into the DXDAO. That didn't happen yet, and I think we kind of need to make sure that we are signaling like out into the public that we actually really want to incubate.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, hopefully we can over the summer get that message out there more with ECC and like other initiatives. So one thing, Christopher, we do have, of course, some level of allocation to contributors, specifically based off of like if you're a part of the Omen Squad and things like that. But this would also be separate because the guild, the guild is going to be controlled by a decentralized governance mechanism. That's just like how the structure of the guilds work currently through our fractalization plan. So even if just to clarify, even if the tokens are moved into a kind of guild ran treasury through a vesting period, that would still be somewhat decentralized. It would still be somewhat collective based, but though it may be more efficient in the long term. But it could be an interesting option to look at and maybe state that up front so people are more aware of how the allocation will work.
Yeah, and I think this also makes total sense for Swapper and Omen. I think like for other guilds or like incubations that might emerge in the future, maybe that's a bit too over-engineered, right? And maybe they want a little bit more independence from the start. But I think for Swapper and Omen, that makes the most sense, yes.
Yeah, exactly. Like I think for an actual incubation project that came in, it would be a completely different formula.
Yeah.
And I just wonder, what is the chance that this could actually lead to something like, Uni v3, which is not open source? That I see that as a potential risk with branching off and being mentored by VCs. What if we see Amen v2, v3, and it's not open source anymore?
So is that necessarily a bad thing? Because that could be a very good thing for retaining value for the Omen token holders. I think the Uniswap price went up a lot after that, and it's only for a year. So after a year, what Uniswap said is after a year it'll be totally open source. It's just 1 year, from what I remember. Is that right?
Yeah, that's correct. I think 1, maybe 2, but I have to check again.
There are many initiatives that would be good for investors, but it's not in line with the ethos of decentralization.
I'd say, unfortunately, a DAO cannot hold an IP license. So I don't think that's an option. I think DXDAO is kind of open source by default, really. Enforced.
Not yet.
Well, hold on. So there's two things to consider. If we do Christopher's suggestion, there, it would be a completely different restructuring, I think, for not these products, but maybe any new products that came in. It would be more traditional in approach. But I think it's mostly like we cross that bridge when it comes, and like we're doing now, we talk about these things within the community, and people have their say and can vote on chain, and that's how we come to consensus. So yeah, but good points still to raise for future consideration.
I would just say, like, I'm curious to hear the teams themselves, their perspective, but I believe that like most of the squad members were like DXDAO first, right? They weren't independently formed and then somehow ended up here out of the existing squad.
Awesome, guys. Anything else on that topic here? A little bit over time now. You see Violet typing and Martin. All right, cool. We do have one last question for the open forum. Obviously, the window's open if there's anything that hasn't been covered in a topic today. If anyone has any questions, feel free to shoot. I'll start with the one that was left with me. What is DXDAO doing to prepare for a potential bear market? I'm not sure, maybe Chris and or John might be the best.
Well, I think the most obvious thing is the treasury diversification, right? Like securing a decent amount of runway in stablecoins. I think it's currently at $7 million in stablecoins. I don't know the latest numbers on the burn rate, but I think that's at least 3 years of runway. I would personally think like 5 years of runway would be a healthy amount to kind of prepare for the potential for a prolonged bear market.
Cool. Anything else from anyone here? I think I'm out of questions that were left with me on my end. All right, awesome, guys. Yeah, thank you very much for coming. I think over now, a little bit over time, so we'll call it here. No POAP this time, but we're thinking about different ways to kind of incentivize these calls and keep people around. So thank you very much for coming today, and see you in 2 weeks.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.
You.
Cheers.